Today we're going to make a wizard wand, and I'm going to show you how to set up the Revo with a 4-jaw chuck and a collet extension. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll be using the G3 Nova chuck. It usually comes with the threads to fit onto your spindle shaft on your lathe or on the ornamental mill. This one has a 1-inch 8 threads per inch, so it'll fit on the models 900, 1200, or 1800. This is the standard set of jaws that come with the chuck. We're going to set it up with a 5/8 shaft adapter so it'll fit onto the Revo, and we've changed the jaws to a spigot jaw so that we can grip the 1/2-inch dowel. To mount the chuck, we'll need to remove the index drive center plate. We'll just take the nut right off the face here. Now the G3 chuck will simply slide over that shaft, and then we'll secure it in place with the cap screw or set screw in the body. Now you'll need the carriage to clear the chuck. So I've lowered the bed. I used a sliding T-square and set it for 1 3/8 of an inch and set that off the top of the rails down to that bracket. Now I'm going to adjust the T-square to 1 1/4 inches, so it's 1/8 of an inch less, and we'll adjust this end so that the bed is 1/8 of an inch higher, which will give us a taper on the wand. We're going to use a 1/2-inch dowel, and I've cut it 15 inches long. We'll just insert it into the chuck right here and tighten it in place. Next, we'll set the tailstock. We'll close the handle down until it's straight down or perpendicular to the machine, and then slide this up until it's centered on the dowel and lock it in place. Then we'll close the handle to put just enough pressure to secure the part. By lowering the bed 1 3/8 of an inch, we give enough clearance so that the carriage will slide right over the 4-jaw chuck. The problem that we're facing now is that the distance between the part and the router is so great that the standard chuck wouldn't give you enough plunge depth to put that down. To overcome this problem, we're going to use a product called the Extreme Extension. You can chuck it up in your standard 1/2-inch collet, and as you can see, it's going to extend the router bit down approximately 1.5 inches. The stock is only 1/2 inch in diameter, so we'll use a 1.5-inch pitch. That will require the 0.25 gear reduction set and the F drive gear. We put a stop here on the x-axis at 2 1/4 inches. The stop will ensure that the router bit does not run into the chuck. For the rope design, we'll use bit number 7591. To set the plunge depth of the router bit, we'll rotate the bit 90 degrees and then plunge the cutter down until the shoulder of the bit touches the surface of the dowel. We'll start by cutting around the circumference right here at 2 1/4 inches. So we'll open the split nut in the x-axis and then just rotate the stock. To cut the spiral, we'll close the split nut and we'll rotate the handle 12 times, and that will move the router along the x-axis 3 inches. Next, we'll open the split nut and slide the carriage back a 1/2 inch, which is the width of the cutter, lock it back onto the split nut, and drive it back to the starting point, which is at 2 1/4 inches. Again, we'll open the split nut, slide it back the 1/2 inch, which is the width of the cutter, lock it in place, and bring it back to the starting point to cut the third and final pass. For the next step, we'll replace the index gear on the spindle shaft with the spindle handle. And then we can make this cut right here at this end. With the carriage still locked on the X-axis lead screw at 5 1/4 inches, we're simply going to rotate the stock as we bring the router over center to cut this end. To mill the tapered straight section on the cane, we're going to use bit number 2704. To set the plunge depth, we'll rotate the cutter 90 degrees and we'll plunge the bit down until it touches the bottom of this previous cut. Now we'll position the cutter so that the edge lines up with the bean. Now we'll move this stop up to that position. With the plunge depth set, we're ready to go ahead and cut the taper. I'm going to start down at the far end, and we'll bring it over till it's a 1/2 inch off center as we rotate the stock and slide the carriage towards the headstock. For the last step, we'll change back to the rope molding bit and set the shoulder of the cutter down until it touches the surface of the wood. And we'll position the carriage at 14 1/2 inches on the X-axis and then just cut around the circumference at this end. Then we'll move it over a 1/2 inch, which will be 2 turns, and make the second cut. Now we'll go ahead and take the cane out, and sand it up, and put a little finish on it. Now we'll use the sanding mop on the drill press to do the final sanding on the wand. A little finish on it and it's ready to go.